Mr. Morgan. And Mrs. White, a royalist through and through. She had good reason to break the author's crown. And finally, the Reverend Green. Morgan's book would rock the church itself, he said. So did he kill in the name of God? A killer sits among them. Well, here this evening, to close tonight's case, would you please welcome our celebrity guest, a watchdog who wants to know the time and the place of a murder. It's John Stapleton. And here, too late alas to save Roger Morgan, Surgical Spirit's Nicola McCauley. And their rivals tonight, he almost didn't make it due to unforeseen circumstances, astrologer Russell Grant. With her own global view of the case, it's Anne Gregg. Well, they are detectives for the evening, so let's find out what their hunches are. John and Nicola, what are your first instinctive impressions?
I'm afraid we have to come to the conclusion that the man of the cloth has a great deal to answer for. Yes. I'm sorry, folks, yes.
But we can't think of a good reason why anyone would want to kill a tabloid journalist.
Carry on.
With the broken glass.
Yeah.
And in the dining room?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
All right, that'll do for starters. Russell and Anne.
Anne is going to have her, because I think this person is far too gorgeous to have done it, but you'll go, gal.
Well, it's not a matter of life and death anyway, is it? So,
No.
I think it was Mrs. Peacock. I think she'd done it with the microphone, and I think she did it in the billiard room.
All right, hold it there just for a second. Now, if you at home want to play detective along with these four, then prepare to turn away or close your eyes, because for the rest of you who just want to watch them stumble down dead ends, we have the gory details coming up right now. You may now open your eyes. And remember, that person, the killer, is a pathological liar. The others here will always tell the truth in answer to questions. So, John and Nicola, which suspect would you like to start with?
Nicola.
I would like to start with Mrs. Peacock, please. Mrs. Peacock, were you in any way inebriated when you had your first interview with the hack?
To be blunt, yes. I do tend to drink a little too much.
I see.
What had you been drinking?
Just wine and a little vodka, a little gin. No,
That's your tipple, we know. Was he inebriated?
a little bit, yes.
Might have made you a little bit indiscreet, mightn't it?
Very.
Yes, I see, I understand. Right, thank you very much. Russell and Anne.
I want to ask the Reverend Jonathan Green, which is the correct way to address you, Mr. Green, is it not?
Thank you very much. It's nice to meet a cultured lady who knows how to dress a man of the cloth.
But I do want to know why you took it upon yourself to go and get the parsnip bake when there was a servant there to do it.
Now that's very, very intuitive. No doubt somebody in your team has been studying the stars and come up with a very good question. I know Mrs. White extremely well. I'd already gone to comfort her when she was somewhat distressed. I also know that she does enjoy a little tipple occasionally, but I wouldn't wish to see her stagger back with a parsnip bake and then feet go under her, land on her backside with a parsnip bake in her lap. Would you want to see that? No, of course you wouldn't.
I wouldn't either.
No.
So we have two tipplers in the house, to our certain knowledge. All right, thank you for the answer. John and Nicola, your witness.
I'd like to ask Miss Scarlett what her idea of the real McCoy is. What were these startling revelations that you had for our dear departed friend?
Well, I told how Princess Catherine liked wild, penniless men, fast cars, and gambling, and how she liked to go to sleazy strip joints, and how evenings with her ended where I was holding her head while she was being sick from drinking too much bourbon. And it was all lies.
She's no better than she should be.
She's certainly not.
Thank you for that answer. Russell and Anne, your witness now.
Russell, speak.
Well, yes, I'm going to have a stab now. Mrs. White, may I call you Blanche? Now, you seem ever so nice.
I am.
And far too sweet to say, and I quote,
Yes.
you'd rather see that man dead.
Oh.
About the journalist. Did you mean that?
Well, I did on the instant, but I say all sorts of impulsive things and then I regret them immediately, you know. That's why I had to go and confess to the vicar over the phone.
All right, another question, please, from John and Nicola.
Yes, I'd like to ask Colonel Mustard, a man who must have seen all kinds of action and presumably will be shocked by nothing, why he was so apparently mortified when asked if he was present or around at the time of the kidnap of Princess Stephanie.
Fred, it's the only blight on my otherwise impeccable military career. I've been a devoted officer to duty for years and never had a day off. And on the day I did have a day off because of my mother's funeral, some bounders from some unmentionable country leapt out in Park Lane and tried to kidnap her. And I've never forgiven myself for the fact that it went terribly awry. And I just didn't want people to bring that up.
Russell and Anne, the last question from you, please.
Yes, well, I'd like to ask Professor Plum a question. I thought that all the microphones were so terribly obvious as they were draped around the house that I wondered if Mrs. Peacock was party to your doing this, to bugging the place.
You thought the microphones were obvious. Well, I have been doing this for some time, and these are all very dear friends of mine, of course. And I'm very fond of them, but you must understand that their average intellect resembles that of a lobotomized termite. And so they wouldn't probably notice these things. And certainly Mrs. Peacock wasn't aware that they were there. No, I mean, I was very glad. I would hate her to know that the microphones were there.
Well, thank you, Professor, for that stream of abuse. So let's find out if we've made any progress. John and Nicola, where, what with, and who?
Well, I'm afraid I'm still sticking to Reverend Green. I found his defensive position pathetic. And I'm still sticking to the broken glass.
Well, I disagree on both counts.
That's fine. All right, what about the location?
Dining room?
Dining room.
Dining
Well,
room.
I'm glad you're of one mind. Let's move across now to Russell and Anne. Your deduction, please.
Well, I'm kind of sticking where I was, but I'm going to get Russell to put in his spoke here. Why not?
I'm going to stick my spoke right in at Colonel Mike Mustard. I think when he gets his mitts on a cheese wire and he heads for the study, I think all hell could break loose.
All right, let's go back to John and Nicola. You're saying the murder took place in the dining room. The glass was a rather unorthodox weapon, and you are accusing the Reverend Green here. I have to tell you, none of those three deductions are correct. Completely wrong.
Play with you anymore.
All right, let's move over to Russell and Anne. You said the study, the cheese wire was the weapon, and you're right, okay, Russell said that Colonel Mustard was the man. 1 out of 3 correct. You've got 1 out of 3 there, Russell.
Worse than getting
Not too good. All right, I think we ought to take a short recess here, but we will be back soon to review developments so far and turn our attention to some intriguing new evidence. So we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much indeed. And welcome back to Cluedo. Who killed journalist Roger Morgan? That's the question that we're trying to answer tonight. But before the investigation resumes, we'll assess the progress that we've made so far. Well, we started with 6 rooms, 6 weapons, and of course 6 suspects. Russell and Anne said that the scene of the crime was the study. The cheese wire was the weapon, and Colonel Mustard did the deed. Only 1 out of those 3 was correct, but which one? And thanks to John and Nicola's completely incorrect deduction, we can now eliminate the dining room, the broken glass, and the Reverend Green. So, Reverend, you are free of suspicion, but please stay with us. You may be a material witness still.
Thank you. I shall be delighted.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, in a moment, our guest detectives will continue their inquiries, but not before they've had a chance to see some puzzling new evidence.
Don't be in a damn fool, Morgan. There's nothing on those tapes. They're blank. That's for you to know and me to find out.
Well, was that the key piece of evidence or just another red herring? Let's find out as our detectives try more cross-examination. But remember, a deduction has to follow each question and answer. And we'll start with Russell and Anne, your witness.
Well, I thought that film was a bit of a plum pudding, so I'm going to pass this one over to you, Anne.
Yeah, it was definitely a red herring. And talking of red, I want to ask Miss Scarlett a question. When you saw Colonel Mustard jumping out of the window, he left his knife behind. What did you do with it?
Well, I left it there. I was glad that Mike hadn't taken it with him. I wouldn't want him to hurt himself or someone else. I left the room, left the knife, and went out the front door looking for him.
A likely story.
What's the deduction?
Well, I'm going to try and eliminate her by saying it was her.
All right.
It was Miss Scarlett. She did it with the kitchen knife. In the library.